Hello, this week is about direct child guidance. This is different from what we covered last week. Last week was indirect, all the stuff that you put together before the children are ever in the classroom. It's all about planning. This one here is about once the kids arrive, then you're going to need some direct child guidance, because no matter how well you plan, you're always going to have somebody that's going to have to test you to see if you really mean it. Okay. So one of the things that I always say is make your consequences look logical, even to a 4-year-old, because there are some consequences that make no sense. For instance, when you have a child in the classroom and say it's 9 a.m. and they sock the kid next door to him, in the arm. Okay. What is the point of taking away their recess for their afternoon recess? I've been in so many classrooms where I hear, Johnny, you just got your recess taken away this afternoon because you did not keep your hands to yourself. Okay, so by 1:30 in the afternoon, when they all march outside to recess and Johnny has to sit on the fence because of his misdeeds, you know what? Poor old Johnny doesn't even remember what he did. Okay, he really doesn't remember, but early childhood is a time when their short-term memory is horrible. Okay, so then you remind him, remember this morning you punched so-and-so in the arm when you were in the art center. I did? Okay. Doesn't remember. It makes no sense. It's not a logical consequence. If you have a child, for instance, that's in a center and they can't keep their hands to themselves, they punch someone in the arm to get whatever, they scribble on other people's work, whatever it is they're doing, the logical consequence there is they're out of that center. In fact, they have the privilege of sitting right next to you someplace. Not forever, but for that day, they're not going to be in that center. They've lost that choice for that day. And I talk to them very quietly. You are sitting here next to me because you did whatever, and that is not acceptable. Now, if this happens over and over and over again, then you're going to have to take it a step further. And I'll be honest with you, in my first grade classroom, I had lots of children that tested me to see if the rules were in effect for everybody. And I had a list of phone numbers taped to my desk. And if somebody tested me past my point of being tested, I would pick up my phone and just call whoever was their person to call, whether it's mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever's taking care of them. And then I would say, excuse me, but Mrs. So-and-so, Johnny needs to talk to you because Johnny was not able to follow my warning and keep his hands to himself, so he will have to talk to you about that. And that way you can tell him what you think about his behavior. Well, let me tell you, you do not have to do that more than once for anybody. You really don't, because they don't want to explain to their family why they weren't behaving. That was extremely effective. And not only was it effective for the child that could not keep his hands to himself, but it was also effective for the other people in the class, because no matter how quietly I would do this off in a corner, their ears would follow me the whole way. And there's, she's calling his mom. Yeah, and he got to tell her why his hands weren't kept to himself too. So anyway, I don't know what your school policy is, but it was extremely helpful in my classroom, and behavior was not an issue after I called. Okay, logical consequences. There you go. You lose a privilege, or you get to explain to your family why you're not following the rules. Restitution, if someone tears up something someone else did, they get to immediately help them put it back together again. That's totally what they need to do. One of the things that I use here is proximity. if I know somebody's liable to be distracted, they've always been distracted, they have to do something, I try to stand as close to them as possible. If someone is talk to their neighbor instead of doing their work, again, I will just come and stand right next to them. You'd be amazed. You don't have to say a word, but if you're there, it's just not near as much fun to talk. Read books. I did read an awful lot of books about behaviors in my classroom. In first grade, I did a lot of Berenstain Bears. If I was teaching second and third, I would probably do Junie B. Jones. But the Berenstain Bears have books on everything: lying, cheating, stealing, bullying, making friends. I mean, you can get the whole gamut. But I'm sure there are other series that are just as good, but these were very entertaining while I read them, and kids loved them. It explained things well. So we did read a lot of books about behaviors. I use picture cues for some students because, sometimes children kind of tune you out after a while. You've told them so many times, get to work, do this, do that. And I would literally have a picture of a child doing whatever they're supposed to be doing, like finishing their paper or whatever, laminated and had it on a key ring. So I could pick out whichever one I wanted. And sometimes I would just walk along and put that picture on the face up on the key ring on someone's table and look at them. And they got the idea. Sometimes a picture is just worth 1,000 words. Now, if you're doing fours and you have an official cleanup time after centers, I assign duties for each center. There's always one child that's responsible for this, one child's responsible for that, and then there's no arguing about what happens. Just assign a job. Timeout. I see a lot of people using timeout. They have a timeout chair or a timeout corner. I'm not a big proponent of timeout. I really prefer to use a time in more than timeout. For one thing, you've got Johnny that's always in that timeout chair. He kind of becomes the outcast and everyone knows it. And a lot of times teachers even forget sending the kid to timeout, and then they're over there going, teacher, can I come back? Well, you hear that all the time when you're in the classroom. So for me, I would keep the child next to me, and they'd have the privilege of sitting next to me the whole time. But the whole time they were doing that, I was talking to them about what they, now you tell me what you did. Why are you here? How are you going to do it better next time? So it wasn't all that much fun to sit next to me either, but they did get to hear about what they did and how they're not going to do it again. So the other thing I wanted to introduce, a lot of times we have children that really try our patience. I mean, let's be honest. Teachers don't have favorites. We all say that, and I tried my best not to. But we all know in our heart of hearts that there are some children that we just love to pieces. And then there are others that we think that child really is trying my patience every day. Okay, now I've got that out of the way. This penny for your thoughts. Sometimes you really have difficulty giving one child lots of positive attention, and that is what they need the most. Because a lot of negative behaviors are just attention getters. It does get your attention when they misbehave. But what if you gave them that attention when they're being good? So yeah, read A Penny for Your Thoughts and think about it and see about that positive attention for that child who really tries your patience.